So if you have an ultrasonic cleaner or you're thinking about getting one of the questions that'll come up is, what do I use inside that ultrasonic cleaner? We're going to answer that for you today, or we're going to get close. We're going to try everything from cheap to expensive on a rod and piston assembly out of this old crusty 350. One rod and piston will be used for each of the cleaners, and we'll see which one is the best. The rod and pistons all look to be very similar in buildup and carbon on the faces and everything else. So this should be a pretty fair comparison between all of these. I'm also going to throw in a couple bolts from the oil pan in each batch. Starting off, SuperClean. So we're going to do 1 gallon SuperClean to 3 gallons of water, and then we're going to heat it up to 80 degrees like we are with every detergent we're going to try. Is going to be at 80 degrees Celsius. So this setup here, it costs us $15.39 for the gallon of SuperClean. Next up is this ultrasonic cleaning solution. This is $41.39 for the gallon of this. We are mixing it 1 to 3, which is more concentrated than they would recommend. I think it's 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. Here, SuperClean is ready. It's at 80 degrees, so I'm going to drop a rod and piston assembly in, as well as the 2 bolts. 30 minutes. This is the ultrasonic cleaner solution, and dropped one in there. 30 minutes. Now it's been 30 minutes. We're going to flip them over and do another 30. And that's it. So 2 sessions at 30 minutes and 80 degrees Celsius detergent. And we are going to pull them out, set them aside, label them, and we will come back and compare the results here at the end of the video. I'm cleaning the ultrasonic cleaners out between each one so we don't get any cross-contamination between the chemicals or the cleaners. I don't think any of them would react with each other, but better safe than sorry. And up next is Zep Fast 505. This is $9.95 a gallon. This is the only cleaner we're using in full strength. We're not diluting this, so it's going to take us 3 gallons. So this batch is going to end up costing us $29.25. So now that we're poor from using the fast to full strength, we're going to use just water and 4 Cascade dishwashing pods in this one. So the cost on this batch is $1.48. It's already up to temp because I was able to use hot water where the fast is still heating up. And the fast is ready now, and man, you can see how much of a detergent that is. That is just stripping the grease off right away as soon as I dropped it in there. Look at that go. And now that water's pretty gross now too. This is the detergent, or the Cascade. It's been 30 minutes, so we just flip them over and start another 30. And now that Fast 505 is still working hard, and it's been 30. We're gonna flip it and go another 30. Hopefully we'll have a piston and rod left there. It looks like it's dissolving it. And out comes the Cascade Pod piston and rod assembly. Man, that thing actually looks pretty good. That'll be interesting. And the fast is ready as well, so we're going to go ahead and pull that one out. Man, that one looks pretty good too. And next up is this it's called Formula 88. And I was pointing out there that it's not for sale in California. I'm not sure what's in it that California doesn't like, but we're mixing it 1 to 3 parts water. 1 gallon of that to 3 gallons of water. And I almost forgot, the Formula 88 is $19.75, so this batch cost us $19.75. And next up in the other corner is this Ecolab Orange Citrus Cleaner. We're going to mix this 1 to 3 as well. The Citrus Cleaner cost us $9.99 at Home Depot. And the Citrus Cleaner was warmed up first, so we can go the piston and the 2 bolts. There's definitely some stuff happening there. I don't have the volume on because the ultrasonic cleaners make an absolutely awful ear-piercing noise on mics. And the Formula 88 is going in now. I don't see a ton happening, but a little bit of color comes out after the ultrasonic starts going. All right, now we're going to flip the citrus. What the heck is going on with the end of that rod? I'll explain that one later. That's the first time I've run into that, but I knew that existed. That had nothing to do with the cleaner, by the way. First 30-minute cycle's done for the Formula 88, so we're going to flip it and try not to burn the crap out of your hand. 80 degrees Celsius is pretty hot. And now we're going to flip the citrus. Actually, we're not flipping it. We're already done. We're done with the citrus now, and we're pulling it out. That looks pretty decent. Not the best, but it looks pretty good. This one looks pretty good. That's done now. Now we're doing Salt's Gone. So this is going to be the most expensive, I believe. $49.10 for this one. We're mixing it 3-to-1. Okay, so now this one is the one I'm actually a little bit afraid of, and this is the Dawn. I'm afraid of it because I'm afraid it's going to foam and just like turn into. I'm going to have to watch it. I'm afraid it's going to foam and just start flooding the shop. I'm doing a half cup to 4 gallon, 3 or 4 gallons ish in there. The Dawn I estimated cost about $1.44, so it's the cheapest option we've had so far. And here goes the bolts. And it looks like it's doing a little bit. It's not doing a lot. Here the Salt's Gone. Salt's Gone is ready to get dropped in. Not really a lot going on in there, but you can see a little bit happening. I don't think Salt's Gone's actually a detergent. That's might be one of the problems with it. All right, time to flip the Dawn. It's not looking very hot. It's cleaner, but it's not as good as a lot of the others. All right, back to the Salt's Gone. We got to flip that one over now. So that's actually looking pretty good, but it looks like it's struggling a little bit with the carbon on the top of the piston. All right, the Dawn is done. So let's pull it out and see what it looks like. And that's not very good, but that's probably on track for the worst so far. We'll pull the bolts out, put them aside, and we'll get to those here in a bit. All right, the Salt's Gone. We'll pull that one out. That one looks pretty good, but the carbon, man, it did struggle with that carbon on the top of the piston. And since that Salt's Gone's still hot, we're going to drop in a really rusty piston that's been sitting outside, some chain and a rocker arm, and we're going to see what that'll do. We'll get back to that at the end of the video. Now let's get into the results. So these are all looking really good. You know, each one has their plus and minuses, but we got a point system we're going to assign to every aspect of this thing, or as many aspects as I could think of. Oh man, that one looks funny. And then we will figure out which one's the best, and you can assess for yourself or the situation you're in which one is the best for you. All right, we're going to look at each piston now, and I'm going to sit here and mark scores down and put them on a spreadsheet, and I'll get to the spreadsheet as soon as we're done. But we're going to look at each one of these, and then I'll reveal which cleaning product it was that we used. So what I'm doing here with the score, with the scribe, is I'm actually just scratching the surface. I'm not actually going to use these pistons, or I wouldn't recommend doing that. But I'm going to scratch the surface and see how much discoloration the surface has. And that's from basically the product being very acidic, and it's actually being slightly corrosive to the material. The aluminum's been more sensitive than the iron, but even the iron there got a little discolored from this product. So that's probably not ideal in all scenarios. So if you could find something that could remove grease and do all that stuff without being so acidic, that would be great, especially in an ultrasonic cleaner. And now I'm just kind of looking at the bolts and seeing how clean they got them, seeing how much it discolored them, and that type of stuff. I'm keep writing a points system down, and we'll go over that here at the end. So this rod was cleaned with SuperClean. So yep, that was the first one we did, and it's also the first one we checked. All right, and the next one up here, this one is also a little acidic on the piston, but the rod itself looks pretty good. The nuts all spin freely, and you can see that nut has copper on it. That means that someone has been into this engine, and that actually came from that other copper-coated rod that we'll stumble upon here in a minute, and I'll explain what that copper is. But anyway, someone must have been into this at some point. So it looks like the carbon is all off the top of the piston, so that's real good. The piston is definitely discolored, so it is a pretty acidic cleaner. We'll scratch it here just to see how much. Yeah, that's definitely pretty acidic for the aluminum. So that's probably not ideal for aluminum. But the rod looks real good. It's nice and bright. I don't really see too much discoloration when I scratch it. So that's pretty good. So I'm liking that part of it. It seemed to do a pretty good job at removing all the grease and everything. So this product's pretty good. So now the bolts are actually very clean. That worked pretty good on that one. I'm not getting too much discoloration on that at all, so that's pretty good. This one had a little bit of buildup still left on it. That could have been resolved had I shuffled those bolts around a little bit. When we flipped the piston, I probably should have shuffled those bolts, and that probably would have helped it. But that was ZEP 505. So ZEP 505 did pretty good.
All right, guys, so this is a special one. We can't take any of this into consideration because this is actually copper dipped. And the reason they did that is on the assembly line. It's actually quite interesting. On the assembly line, this thing must have been slightly oversized, so they dip it in copper, or I'm not sure how they actually apply that on there. I'm just guessing that they probably heat it up and dip it in molten copper. But it's possible, too, they're spraying it, or they're electrolysis, or I'm not sure exactly how they're doing it. But it is covered in copper. So it was slightly oversized. They do their copper treatment, and then they rehone it, and that's enough to get them within spec. And it seemed to have worked. This engine has been rebuilt, and I know that because these nuts don't belong to this rod, but these are the nuts that were on this rod. And if you'll notice later, there's one of the nuts, and I believe there was the other nut. So those are copper coated. So they had that assembled when they copper coated it, however they do that. So anyway, so we can't consider the copper part as part of the test. So we're going to have to ignore the ugliness of that. And then we can kind of move on to the rest.
All right, and now into how good the cleaner did on this one. So this one did okay. It's kind of a middle of the road for all the cleaners that we tested. It wasn't super acidic, but it was acidic enough to where it definitely discolored the rod a tiny bit, and also the piston a tiny bit. But neither one were too bad. So it did pretty good. If you guys were really paying attention, you'll know which cleaner this was because you'll recognize the copper end. But it did get all the carbon off of it. All in all, this doesn't look the greatest. It's not my favorite thing. My favorite cleaner in here. It didn't dissolve the lead too terribly bad like some of the other more acidic ones. But in the end, it's an okay cleaner. It just didn't do pretty much it didn't do anything very well. It just kind of did everything adequately, and it didn't destroy parts, which is good. But I did notice that it must be somewhat acidic because the stuff actually kind of rusted. It bloomed pretty quickly after we took it out, which means it left it somewhat acidic. So this is the citrus. All right, so this one, this one's like, I don't know. It's good, but it's not very good. It's like everything was just almost like it needs to run like 2 or 3 more cycles. It did discolor the rod a little bit. It just doesn't seem like it's as clean as a lot of the other ones. But it also didn't destroy the lead in the bearing and stuff. So far, it's not really my favorite. It got most of the carbon off, but it kind of left some staining, so it didn't get it all the way clean. And then it oxidized it a little bit, but that's mostly because I put it down wet, face down on the paper towel. So it didn't totally discolor the aluminum, so that's kind of on the plus side. So far, it's an okay product, whatever it is. It didn't remove all the paint all the way, so it's obviously not a crazy harsh chemical. But it did. I don't know. It kind of just cleaned everything okay. Obviously, if I would have tossed these bolts, that would have that a lot of that dirt and stuff would have come out. Unfortunately, I didn't do that, so a lot of the bolts still had stuff stuck in them there. But it didn't do a great job at cleaning those either. So what was that? That was the ultrasonic cleaning solution. So that's what is meant for this machine. Okay, so now this one. Okay, there's no carbon left. That's pretty good. I do see some discoloration already on the piston, so that's not the best. The rod is very bright. That is a really clean rod. It almost looks like it was shot blasted or something. The bolts and nuts are doing very good. It got everything out from inside there. The lead isn't super chewed up on it. I mean, more than the engine already had it wore out. Those bearings were very, very wore. Here's the discoloration so you can see it. It's definitely a little bit discolored. Not the worst of everything we've done, but definitely not the best either. It got all the grease out, got most of the carbon and stuff out. The rod is, God, crazy bright. How bright that rod got out of that one. So I am pretty impressed with that. That's probably one of the brightest rods in the group. I do believe. So that one did pretty good on the rod, and then the bolts. So again, the head of this bolt is filled with crap again. So that must be a difficult area for the ultrasonic cleaner to clean out, because usually even just in water it would knock most of that stuff out. But where it did clean it cleaned it really bright. So it did really good on iron and pretty good on aluminum. This one. What is this one? This one is Cascade. So Cascade, that's one of the cheapest. I think that's the second to cheapest one we've tested. Okay, on to this next one. So this one's pretty good. The rod is really nice looking, but it is discolored a little bit on this one. But overall, it's pretty good. So you can kind of see the brightness there. So it definitely discolored the rod. It's kind of odd how some of these will be more acidic towards the steel and some will be more acidic towards the aluminum. And I'm saying acidic, and that's probably pretty uneducated saying that, but I don't know what would make something more corrosive to aluminum than steel, or vice versa, other than the pH level of the material. But anyway, it got all the carbon off. This one got all the carbon off. The piston top looks actually pretty good, other than the casting is super crude on this one. I don't know if you could see that there, but that's part of the casting that was that way. It was very, very crude piston. The lead material is in pretty good shape on this one. The metal's bright, everything's clean. We got one of those copper nuts on this one. And everything moves pretty free. So the bolts actually were a little bit discolored, but not too terribly bad. I'm not really sure why that bolt at least, granted, these could be all mismatched bolts to begin with, because one of the bolts was pretty black and the other one was kind of more brown, but they're definitely not super bright. It definitely didn't do a very good job on all the iron. That was the Formula 88. All right, this one we're going to go in fast forward because basically it sucked. This wasn't really particularly good at anything. I'm imagining you can probably guess which one this one was. But yeah, it pretty much may as well have just been water. It's probably a step above water, but not too much better. All right, now for the last one. So this one is probably one of my favorite ones, except it didn't actually clean it all the way, especially the carbon on the top, but it did no damage to the lead. It didn't discolor the aluminum at all. It made the rod pretty bright. Not as bright as I believe the 505 was brighter and the dishwashing liquid or detergent was brighter. But it made it pretty bright, but it did not get all the carbon off the face of the piston. So that's a little unfortunate. So this is obviously a very, very low acidic cleaner, or is it even a cleaner? So that is kind of the question. But this is probably one of my favorite ones, even though it wasn't perfect. And now I had carbon all over my thumb, so I just put grease all over the piston. But yeah, again, it didn't discolor that aluminum hardly at all. It very, very it either discolored the rod a little bit, or it didn't get the rod all the way clean, which is kind of what I'm leaning towards, instead of actually discoloring it. If you're looking for something that won't take the paint off, it worked pretty good at that. So I actually knock them points if they don't get all the paint off, but if you're looking for something gentle, this is probably a pretty good option for it. And then again, I got another bolt head that's filled with grime. So again, tossing those would have probably helped. But as you would have guessed, This product was Salt's Gone. So that's a pretty good product. I'm pretty happy with it, but also one of the more expensive ones. Okay, so here is my little spreadsheet that I made. I had to delete the labels for what my point systems were, but all those points in the middle, those are the points that they racked up for each of the different categories of which I was rating them for, but it made the spreadsheet really, really small. So I deleted them, but you get the point. So the SuperClean, that one's just a little too acidic for me. I probably won't be using that in my ultrasonic cleaner. The ultrasonic cleaning solution, well, considering I have a whole bunch of it, I'll probably be using that a lot, but it did surprisingly poor. Its points were lower probably than it deserved, but at the same time, I tried to stay as neutral as possible when I was looking at the parts, and that's just what it got, 24.5. ZEP 505, that is the highest scoring of all the items, but it's also one you have to use straight. I didn't dilute it. You could try diluting it, but I don't think it would be as effective if you did, but you definitely could try it. So that ended up costing $29.25 to fill it to 3 gallons. If you want to go 4, it would be more. The Cascade Pods are the most impressive of the group because that's only $1.48 to fill that, and it was scored a 36. So that's the second highest points. And it was almost the cheapest if it wasn't for the Dawn dish soap, which we may as well just throw out because it was worthless. So it's definitely the cheapest of the things that worked by far. And you can be pretty wasteful with it at that point and always have nice fresh solution if that's what you would like. But it was a little bit acidic on some of the parts, which is why it got knocked a little bit on the points. The citrus, man, I probably wouldn't recommend it unless you can't get anything else. The Formula 88, that worked really well. It has a pretty good points. In the end, it was pretty good. It's not my top 2 choices, but it's definitely up there. It did everything pretty well. And it didn't really destroy the parts with corrosion. So that's a pretty good one. The Salt's Gone. So the Salt's Gone is kind of in a category of its own because that is a pH neutral product. So that's not as much of a detergent or anything like that as all the others. But it somehow does really, really well. And apparently it does really well at removing rust. So that's what we're trying right now in the machine. And so let's get to that now. But my choice, Cascade Pods. And then I guess you can kind of go from there. But man, I cannot see much other than those Cascade Pods being the best. One thing with the Cascade Pods though, it may be worth trying not pods and just buying the detergent in a powder because the plastic from the pod, the little bag that's in, that never fully dissolved. And that actually came out in the drain when I drained it. So as like kind of a clump. So anyway, kind of keep that in mind too. I am going to try for my own some Cascade detergent without the pod. So I'll try that. But anyway, let's get to this Salt's Gone and see how it removed the rust from that old rusty piston and chain and stuff. Okay, well, it's definitely dirty. Well, man, it is bright. Let's take a closer look at it here. So again, it struggled with carbon on the top, but man, that rod and everything is pretty nice. You would never expect that was as nasty as it was. It's still a little stiff, so it didn't get everything out of the obviously the pivots and stuff. There's probably some pitting as well. The rocker arm looks pretty good. The rust is gone. It has a little bit of a coating of kind of like black crap on it. And then the chain is in really good shape. And that was gnarly. I mean, that chain it couldn't have gotten any rustier. I mean, it's kind of like rusting away, but it got all the rust off of it, which is pretty cool. So this stuff doesn't have a smell either. So that's another coolest thing about that rust's gone, or the salt's gone. So that works out good. So that was a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed that. Definitely comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Share the video, and we will see you again real soon.